Marcus Chen had been a news cameraman for Channel 7 for 12 years, but he had never experienced anything like what happened that Tuesday evening in downtown Phoenix. The day started like any other assignment. His producer Sarah had called him at 3 p.m. with breaking news about a bank robbery in progress on Central Avenue. Marcus grabbed his equipment and rushed to the scene, expecting another routine crime story. When Marcus arrived at First National Bank, police cars surrounded the building. Officers crouched behind their vehicles with weapons drawn. The scene looked tense, but Marcus had covered dozens of similar situations. He set up his camera across the street, adjusting the lens to capture the action. Detective Rodriguez, whom Marcus knew from previous assignments, approached him. "Stay back, Marcus. This one's different. The suspect has hostages inside, and he's armed with military-grade weapons," Detective Rodriguez warned. "We've been trying to negotiate for 2 hours." Marcus nodded and positioned himself behind the police barrier. He began recording, panning across the scene to show viewers the intensity of the situation. Through his viewfinder, he could see SWAT team members moving into position. The bank's large windows were covered from inside, making it impossible to see what was happening. As Marcus continued filming, he noticed something strange happening with his camera. The display screen flickered occasionally, showing brief images that didn't match what he was pointing at. At first, he thought it was just equipment malfunction. His camera was old and glitches happened sometimes. He tapped the side of the device and continued recording. The police negotiator, a calm woman named Officer Williams, was speaking through a megaphone. "Sir, we want to help you. Please release the hostages, and we can talk about whatever is bothering you." Her voice echoed off the surrounding buildings. Marcus zoomed in on her, capturing the determination on her face. Suddenly, Marcus's camera screen showed something that made his blood run cold. For just a split second, the display revealed the interior of the bank. He could see a man in black clothing holding a rifle, standing near the teller counter. 3 bank employees sat on the floor with their hands tied. But this was impossible. Marcus was pointing his camera at the outside of the building. Marcus blinked hard and looked at his camera again. The screen now showed the normal view of the police cars and officers. He shook his head, thinking stress was making him see things. He had been working long hours lately, and maybe his mind was playing tricks on him. 20 minutes later, the glitch happened again. This time, Marcus saw the man inside the bank moving toward the back exit. The image was crystal clear, as if his camera had somehow developed X-ray vision. Marcus could even see the man's face clearly. He had a scar running down his left cheek and wore a black baseball cap. Marcus quickly looked around to see if anyone else had noticed his camera's strange behavior. The other news crews were focused on their own equipment. Detective Rodriguez was coordinating with the SWAT team. Nobody seemed to be paying attention to Marcus or his malfunctioning camera. The third glitch lasted longer than the others. Marcus watched in amazement as his camera showed the gunman cutting zip ties that bound the hostages' hands. The man wasn't threatening them. Instead, he appeared to be freeing them. Marcus saw him gesture toward the back of the bank, pointing to what looked like an emergency exit. This didn't make sense. Why would a bank robber release his hostages? Marcus had covered hundreds of crime stories, and this behavior was completely unusual. Bank robbers typically used hostages as bargaining chips or human shields. They didn't just let them go. Marcus decided to test his camera. He pointed it directly at the ground and watched the screen. For a moment, he saw concrete and asphalt. Then the image changed again, showing him the bank's interior from a different angle. This time, he could see the hostages moving quietly toward the back of the building. The gunman was leading them, not forcing them. Detective Rodriguez's radio crackled with urgent voices. Marcus couldn't hear the exact words, but the tone suggested something important was happening. The detective's face grew serious as he listened to the transmission. He immediately called for backup units and ordered the SWAT team to prepare for movement. Marcus kept his camera rolling, capturing the police response while secretly watching the impossible images on his screen. The gunman was now at the back door of the bank with the 3 hostages. Marcus could see him checking outside before opening the door. The man seemed more like a protector than a criminal. The hostages emerged from the back of the bank just as Marcus's camera showed him they would. They ran toward the police line with their hands raised, shouting that they were the bank employees. Officers quickly surrounded them, checking for injuries and asking questions about the situation inside. Marcus lowered his camera and stared at it in disbelief. Somehow his equipment had shown him exactly what was going to happen before it actually occurred. The glitches weren't random malfunctions. They were revealing real events happening inside the bank in real time. One of the freed hostages, a middle-aged woman named Janet, was speaking to Detective Rodriguez. Marcus moved closer to hear what she was saying. "He's not a robber," Janet insisted. "He said his name was David Kane. He told us that real bank robbers were coming and he was there to protect us. He had us hide in the vault until it was safe." Marcus's hands trembled as he held his camera. The name David Kane meant something to him, but he couldn't remember what. He had heard it before, perhaps in another news story. The face he had seen on his camera screen also seemed familiar, especially that distinctive scar. Detective Rodriguez looked confused by Janet's statement. "Ma'am, if he wasn't robbing the bank, why did he have weapons? Why didn't he just call the police?" Janet shook her head. "He said there wasn't time. He said they were already on their way, and if we didn't hide, people would get hurt. He kept watching the front door like he was expecting someone." Marcus realized that his camera might be the key to understanding what was really happening. If the glitches continued, he might be able to see the true story unfolding inside the bank. But first, he needed to figure out why his equipment was malfunctioning in such an impossible way. As the sun began to set behind the downtown buildings, Marcus prepared for what he sensed would be a very long night. The police were regrouping, the hostages were safe, but the man with the scar was still inside the bank. And Marcus's camera was still showing him things that shouldn't be possible to see. Detective Rodriguez gathered his team for a strategy meeting, while Marcus continued filming from his position behind the police barrier. The freed hostages had been taken to ambulances for medical checks, but their stories about David Kane protecting them had left everyone confused. Marcus kept one eye on his camera screen, waiting for another glitch that might reveal more about the mysterious man inside the bank. Officer Williams, the negotiator, tried calling the bank's main phone line. The phone rang several times before someone answered. Marcus adjusted his audio equipment to try to catch any sound, but the conversation was too quiet to hear clearly. Through his camera's normal view, he could see Officer Williams writing notes as she spoke. Then another glitch occurred, and Marcus nearly dropped his camera in shock. This time, the screen showed him David Kane answering the phone inside the bank. The man looked tired and worried. Marcus could see him checking his watch repeatedly and glancing toward the front windows. Kane appeared to be explaining something urgent to Officer Williams. Marcus quickly grabbed a notebook and started writing down what he observed during these impossible glimpses. Kane was alone in the bank now that the hostages were safe. He had positioned himself near the main entrance, still holding his rifle but keeping it pointed down. The man moved like someone with military training, checking corners and maintaining awareness of his surroundings. The conversation between Kane and Officer Williams ended, and Rodriguez's radio immediately came to life. Marcus couldn't hear the exact details, but the detective's expression grew grim. Rodriguez called for additional units and contacted the FBI field office. Whatever Kane had told the negotiator was serious enough to escalate the entire situation. Marcus remembered where he had heard the name David Kane before. 3 years ago, he had covered a story about a former Army sniper who had testified in a court case involving military contractors. The man had blown the whistle on illegal weapons sales and had received death threats afterward. Marcus recalled that Kane had disappeared after the trial, with some people believing he had been killed. If this was the same David Kane, his presence at the bank made more sense. Marcus had learned over the years that whistleblowers often lived in fear, always looking over their shoulders. Maybe Kane really was trying to protect innocent people from something dangerous. Marcus's camera glitched again, showing him a view of the street from inside the bank. Through Kane's perspective, Marcus could see a black van parked 3 blocks away. The van had tinted windows and no visible license plates. 2 men sat in the front seats, and Marcus could see them talking into radios or phones. The image on Marcus's screen returned to normal, but he immediately pointed his real camera toward the area where he had seen the van. Sure enough, the black vehicle was there, exactly as his impossible vision had shown him. Marcus zoomed in and began recording the van, though he wasn't sure why. Detective Rodriguez received another radio call and immediately dispatched 2 patrol cars toward the van's location. Marcus watched through his telephoto lens as the police cars approached. The van's engine started, and it began moving slowly away from the scene. The officers followed at a distance, maintaining surveillance. Inside the bank, Kane was moving again. Marcus's camera showed him that Kane had found a position near a side window, where he could watch both the front street and the back alley. The man seemed to be waiting for something specific. His military training was obvious in the way he moved efficiently and kept his weapon ready. Marcus noticed that other news crews were starting to pack up their equipment. With the hostages safe and no immediate action happening, most reporters assumed the story was winding down. But Marcus's unique perspective through his malfunctioning camera told him the real story was just beginning. Officer Williams tried calling Kane again. This time, Marcus's camera glitch allowed him to hear part of the conversation. Kane's voice was calm but urgent. "They'll be here soon. I've been tracking them for 6 months. This bank processes transfers for their money laundering operation. Tonight is when they move the clean money," Marcus wrote frantically in his notebook. Money laundering. Military contractors. This wasn't a simple bank robbery at all. Kane was apparently trying to stop a much larger criminal operation. The mysterious van and the additional FBI presence suddenly made perfect sense. Kane continued speaking to Officer Williams. "I couldn't go through normal channels. These people have contacts in law enforcement. I tried the FBI twice, but somehow they always knew I was coming. Too many good agents have died because of leaks in the system." Marcus's camera returned to normal view, but he had heard enough to understand the situation. Kane wasn't a criminal. He was a whistleblower trying to expose corruption, and he was doing it the only way he knew how, by putting himself directly in harm's way to protect innocent people and gather evidence. The black van had disappeared from Marcus's view, but he noticed more suspicious vehicles appearing in the area. A white sedan parked near the coffee shop across the street. 2 motorcycles stopped at a gas station 1 block away. Men in these vehicles were watching the bank and the police presence. Detective Rodriguez's radio activity increased dramatically. Marcus could see him coordinating with multiple agencies now. FBI agents arrived in unmarked cars. A bomb squad van pulled up near the command post. The situation was escalating rapidly, but most of the other news crews had already left. Marcus realized he might be the only journalist who truly understood what was happening. His malfunctioning camera was giving him access to information that could break the biggest story of his career. But it was also showing him that David Kane and possibly many police officers were walking into a very dangerous trap. Kane moved to a different position inside the bank, and Marcus's camera followed him. The man was setting up what looked like surveillance equipment near one of the teller stations. Kane appeared to be recording something, possibly gathering evidence of the illegal financial activities he had mentioned. Marcus checked his own recording equipment to make sure he was capturing everything. His footage of the mysterious vehicles and the police response could be crucial evidence later. But he also felt a responsibility to somehow help Kane, who seemed to be fighting corruption alone. The sun had completely set now, and streetlights illuminated the scene with an eerie glow. Marcus noticed that the white sedan had moved closer to the bank. The men inside were no longer trying to hide their interest in the police activity. Whatever Kane was expecting to happen was about to begin. Marcus's camera showed him Kane checking his watch again. The man looked directly at the front door and spoke quietly into his phone. "They're here. Remember, I need 15 minutes to download the files. After that, you can come in." Marcus watched in fascination as his camera revealed Kane working frantically at one of the bank's computer terminals. The man had somehow bypassed the security systems and was downloading files at incredible speed. Multiple USB drives were plugged into different ports, and Kane's laptop was connected to the bank's main server. Detective Rodriguez received an urgent radio transmission that made him call for immediate backup. Marcus could see the detective's face growing more serious by the minute. FBI agent Sarah Martinez arrived and took charge of the coordination between agencies. Her presence confirmed that this situation involved federal crimes. The white sedan that Marcus had been watching suddenly accelerated and drove directly toward the bank. Marcus's camera glitched at the perfect moment, showing him Kane inside the bank diving behind a desk, just as bullets shattered the front windows. The attack had begun, exactly as Kane had predicted. Marcus dropped to the ground behind the police barrier as gunfire erupted throughout the area. The men from the white sedan had automatic weapons and were shooting at both the bank and the police positions. Marcus kept his camera rolling, capturing the chaos while trying to stay safe. Through his impossible camera glitches, Marcus could see Kane moving through the bank with professional precision. The man was still protecting the computer equipment where his downloads were continuing. Kane returned fire through the broken windows, but his shots were carefully aimed to disable, rather than kill. Agent Martinez coordinated the police response through her radio. SWAT teams moved into position around the building, while other officers evacuated civilians from nearby businesses. Marcus realized he was witnessing a major operation that had been planned for months. Kane's voice came through Officer Williams' phone, and this time Marcus could hear him clearly through his camera's audio glitch. The files are almost finished downloading. These records will prove that Senator Harrison and Judge Mitchell have been taking payments from arms dealers. The bank processes all their transactions. Marcus wrote down every word. This story was bigger than he had imagined. Government corruption, illegal weapon sales, and money laundering were all connected. Kane had spent months gathering evidence, and tonight was his only chance to expose the truth. The gunmen from the white sedan were joined by the motorcycles Marcus had noticed earlier. More armed men approached the bank from different directions, creating a coordinated attack. But the police and FBI were ready for them, suggesting that Kane's phone calls had provided valuable intelligence. Marcus's camera showed him Kane finishing his downloads and packing the USB drives into a small waterproof container. The man then moved toward the back of the bank where Marcus knew there was an emergency exit. Kane was planning to escape, but first he had to get past the armed men surrounding the building. Agent Martinez spoke into her radio, and Marcus heard her clearly this time. Target is moving toward exit point 3. All units maintain positions until he's clear. Remember, he's cooperating with us now. Do not engage unless he's in immediate danger. Marcus understood that Kane had made a deal with the FBI. The man wasn't a criminal being pursued by police. He was a protected witness helping to expose a major corruption scandal. The entire standoff had been arranged to allow Kane to gather final evidence while keeping him safe. Kane appeared at the back door of the bank, moving carefully through the darkness. Marcus's camera followed him as he used military tactics to avoid the gunmen who were still attacking the front of the building. Kane had the skills and training to disappear into the urban environment, but something went wrong. One of the motorcycles had circled around to the back alley, and the rider spotted Kane leaving the bank. The gunman opened fire and Kane dove behind a dumpster for cover. Marcus watched through his camera as Kane realized he was trapped between the building and his attacker. Detective Rodriguez heard the gunfire from the alley and immediately sent officers to help Kane. But Marcus could see through his glitched camera that they might not arrive in time. Kane was running low on ammunition and the gunman was moving closer. Marcus made a decision that changed everything. He grabbed his powerful camera light and pointed it directly at the gunman in the alley. The sudden bright beam blinded the attacker and gave Kane the opportunity he needed to reach better cover. The gunman on the motorcycle turned toward Marcus's position and began shooting at the news van. Marcus ducked behind his equipment while continuing to operate the camera light. Police officers used the distraction to surround the gunman and force him to surrender. Kane used the confusion to escape into the maze of downtown buildings. Marcus's camera lost track of him, but Agent Martinez's radio confirmed that other FBI agents had made contact with Kane and were escorting him to safety. The battle at the front of the bank was ending as well. The remaining gunmen were either arrested or had fled when they realized the police were too well prepared. Marcus had captured the entire confrontation on camera, along with his impossible glimpses inside the bank. Agent Martinez approached Marcus after the scene was secure. "We need to talk about what you recorded tonight," she said seriously. "Some of this footage will be needed as evidence in federal court cases." Marcus nodded, but he didn't mention the strange glitches that had given him impossible views of Kane's activities. He wasn't sure anyone would believe him, and he needed time to understand what had happened to his camera. Detective Rodriguez joined the conversation. "The man inside the bank, David Kane, is a federal witness. He's been working undercover for 6 months to expose corruption in military contracting. Tonight's operation gathered the final evidence needed to make arrests." Marcus asked the obvious question. "Why didn't Kane just work with local police from the beginning?" Agent Martinez looked grim. "Because we suspected there were leaks in multiple agencies. Kane's previous attempts to report this corruption resulted in the deaths of 2 FBI agents and a federal prosecutor. We had to create a situation where the corrupt officials couldn't interfere. Marcus realized that Kane's dramatic appearance at the bank had been carefully planned. By creating a public incident with news coverage, Kane had forced the corrupt officials to act in the open where their activities could be recorded and witnessed. The files that Kane had downloaded from the bank's computers contained financial records proving that several government officials had received payments from illegal arms dealers. The gunmen who attacked the bank were sent to stop Kane from getting that evidence. As dawn approached, Marcus packed up his equipment and prepared to edit his footage. He had captured one of the biggest corruption scandals in recent history, but he still couldn't explain why his camera had shown him impossible views of events happening inside buildings and around corners. Marcus decided to keep the glitches secret until he could figure out what had caused them. The important thing was that Kane was safe and the evidence was secured. Justice would finally be served. 3 days after the bank incident, Marcus sat in his apartment reviewing the footage he had captured. The story had made national headlines, but most news outlets were reporting it as a failed bank robbery with an unexpected hero. Marcus knew the real story was much more complex, and his camera had captured evidence that nobody else possessed. Agent Martinez had called Marcus that morning requesting a meeting. She wanted to review his footage and discuss what he had witnessed. Marcus agreed to meet her at a downtown cafe, but he still hadn't decided whether to reveal the strange glitches that had given him impossible views of the events. As Marcus prepared for the meeting, he experimented with his camera to see if the glitches would happen again. He pointed it at walls, trying to see through them like he had at the bank. Nothing unusual occurred. The camera functioned normally, showing only what was directly in front of the lens. Marcus arrived at the cafe early and chose a table near the back where they could speak privately. Agent Martinez appeared exactly on time, carrying a briefcase and looking around carefully before sitting down. Her cautious behavior reminded Marcus that this case involved people willing to kill to protect their secrets. "Before we begin, I need you to understand something," Agent Martinez said quietly. "David Kane risked his life to expose corruption that goes to the highest levels of government. The evidence he gathered will result in arrests of senators, judges, and military officials. Your footage could be crucial in prosecuting these cases." Marcus nodded and pulled out his laptop to show the agent his recordings. But as he started the video, something impossible happened again. The laptop screen flickered, and instead of showing his footage from outside the bank, it displayed a view from inside Agent Martinez's briefcase. Marcus could see classified documents marked "Top Secret" and photographs of the government officials Kane had mentioned. There were financial records showing millions of dollars in illegal payments and transcripts of recorded phone conversations. The evidence was overwhelming and would destroy the careers of some very powerful people. Marcus blinked hard and looked at his laptop screen again. Now it showed his normal footage of the police cars and SWAT teams. Agent Martinez was watching the video intently, making notes about specific moments that would be useful in court. "This angle of the gunman approaching the bank is excellent," she commented. "We can clearly identify 3 of the suspects who are still at large. But I'm curious about something. You seem to have anticipated their movements. Your camera was pointed in the right direction before they even appeared." Marcus felt uncomfortable lying to a federal agent, but he wasn't ready to discuss the glitches. "I guess I got lucky with my camera positioning," he said. "Years of experience helped me predict where the action might happen." Agent Martinez continued reviewing the footage, but Marcus was distracted by what he had seen in her briefcase. The documents revealed that the corruption was even worse than Kane had indicated. Defense contractors had been selling weapons to foreign terrorist groups while bribing American officials to ignore the illegal sales. As they finished reviewing the video, Agent Martinez made a request that surprised Marcus. "Kane wants to meet with you personally. He feels responsible for putting you in danger when the gunman shot at your position. He also wants to thank you for using your camera light to help him escape." Marcus agreed to the meeting, curious to finally speak with the mysterious man he had watched through his camera's impossible glitches. Agent Martinez arranged for them to meet the next evening at a safe house outside the city. That night, Marcus had trouble sleeping. He kept thinking about the strange behavior of his camera equipment. The glitches had shown him exactly what he needed to see to understand the real story. It was almost as if the camera was trying to help him uncover the truth. Marcus decided to research the history of his camera equipment. He had bought the camera used from another news station 3 years ago. The previous owner was a veteran journalist named Robert Hayes who had covered military stories around the world before retiring. Marcus found Robert Hayes' phone number and called him the next morning. Hayes remembered the camera well and agreed to meet Marcus for coffee to discuss it. The older journalist had an interesting story to tell about the equipment. "That camera has been to some amazing places," Hayes explained. "I used it to cover wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. It was damaged by an explosion in Baghdad and had to be rebuilt using some experimental components. The repair shop said they had to use special circuits because the original parts weren't available." Hayes continued his story. "After the repairs, weird things started happening with that camera. Sometimes it would pick up radio signals or show images from security cameras in the area. I thought it was just interference, but it helped me get some incredible footage that other journalists missed." Marcus felt excited and nervous at the same time. His camera's glitches weren't random malfunctions. They were the result of experimental technology that could somehow intercept electronic signals and display images from other sources. This explained how he had seen inside the bank and into Agent Martinez's briefcase. Hayes warned Marcus to be careful with the camera. "That technology could be dangerous in the wrong hands. I retired partly because I was worried about the ethical implications of using equipment that could spy on people. But in the right situation, it could help expose important truths." Marcus realized that his camera had essentially turned him into an accidental surveillance expert. The equipment could see through walls by picking up signals from security cameras, phones, and other electronic devices. During the bank incident, it had intercepted feeds from the bank's internal cameras and Kane's phone. That evening, Marcus drove to the safe house to meet David Kane. The location was a small cabin surrounded by woods, with FBI agents posted discreetly around the perimeter. Agent Martinez escorted Marcus inside, where Kane was waiting with a cup of coffee and a tired but grateful expression. Kane stood up and shook Marcus's hand firmly. "I want to thank you for helping me escape. Without your camera light, I might not have made it out alive. Agent Martinez tells me you got some excellent footage of the entire operation." Marcus studied Kane's face, noting the scar he had seen so clearly through his camera's glitches. The man looked older than Marcus had expected, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that suggested years of stress and worry. "I have to ask you something," Kane said seriously. "Your camera seemed to be pointed in the right direction at exactly the right times. You captured angles and moments that would have been impossible unless you somehow knew what was going to happen. How did you manage that?" Marcus hesitated, then decided to trust Kane with the truth. "My camera has some unusual capabilities. It picks up electronic signals and sometimes shows me things I shouldn't be able to see. During the bank incident, it was showing me what was happening inside the building." Kane's expression changed from curiosity to concern. "That's military-grade surveillance technology. How did a news camera get equipped with that kind of equipment?" Marcus explained about Robert Hayes and the camera's repair in Baghdad. Kane listened intently, asking technical questions about how the glitches worked and what Marcus had seen. The conversation revealed that Kane had extensive knowledge of surveillance equipment from his military service. "This could be incredibly useful for investigative journalism," Kane said thoughtfully. "But it could also get you killed if the wrong people find out about it. The officials we're exposing have access to advanced technology and wouldn't hesitate to eliminate someone they see as a threat." Agent Martinez had been listening to their conversation with growing alarm. "We need to discuss security measures for both of you. The arrests we're planning will make some very powerful people desperate. They'll do anything to prevent this evidence from reaching court." Marcus returned to work the next day with a new understanding of his camera's capabilities and the dangers that came with them. Agent Martinez had assigned FBI protection for both Marcus and Kane, but she warned that their safety depended on keeping the surveillance technology secret until the corruption cases went to trial. Channel 7's news director, Frank Morrison, called Marcus into his office that morning. Frank had noticed that Marcus's coverage of the bank incident was unusually comprehensive, capturing angles and details that other news crews had missed. He wanted to know how Marcus had managed such thorough documentation. "Your footage is being picked up by networks across the country," Frank said enthusiastically. "This could be the story that wins us a National Journalism Award. But I need to understand your methods so we can replicate this quality in future coverage." Marcus carefully explained his camera positioning and experience without mentioning the electronic surveillance capabilities. Frank seemed satisfied with the explanation and assigned Marcus to follow up on the bank story as more details emerged about the corruption investigation. That afternoon, Marcus received a call from Robert Hayes, the journalist who had previously owned the camera. Hayes sounded worried and asked to meet Marcus immediately at a location away from the news station. Something in his voice made Marcus agree without asking questions. They met at a parking garage downtown where Hayes could speak without being overheard. The older journalist looked around nervously before explaining why he had called. "I've been getting phone calls from people asking about you and that camera. Someone is trying to track down the equipment?" Hayes continued with growing concern. "These aren't reporters or government agents. The voices sound like private military contractors or intelligence operatives. They know about the camera's special capabilities and they want to find it." Marcus felt a chill of fear. The corrupt officials that Kane was exposing had apparently learned about his surveillance equipment and were taking steps to neutralize the threat. This confirmed Agent Martinez's warnings about the danger they all faced. "There's something else you need to know about that camera," Hayes said quietly. "The repair shop in Baghdad that fixed it was actually a front operation for experimental military technology. They were testing surveillance equipment on journalist cameras without our knowledge." Marcus realized that his camera was essentially a prototype for advanced spy technology. The experimental circuits allowed it to intercept various electronic signals and display the feeds on his screen. This explained why the glitches showed him security camera feeds, phone transmissions, and other electronic communications. Hayes handed Marcus a business card for an electronics expert named Dr. Sarah Kim, who specialized in surveillance technology. "She can help you understand how the camera works and possibly modify it to be safer to use. But be careful who you trust. This technology is worth millions to the right buyer." Marcus decided to contact Dr. Kim immediately. Her laboratory was located in a secure building near the university, and she agreed to examine his camera that evening. Agent Martinez insisted on accompanying Marcus to ensure his safety and to evaluate the technology from a law enforcement perspective. Dr. Kim's laboratory was filled with electronic equipment that Marcus didn't recognize. She examined his camera with various diagnostic tools while explaining what she discovered. The camera contained circuits that could intercept cellular phone signals, Wi-Fi transmissions, and even encrypted government communications. "This is incredibly sophisticated technology," Dr. Kim explained. "The camera can essentially hack into any electronic device within a certain range and display the feeds on your screen. It's like having a mobile surveillance station disguised as news equipment." Agent Martinez asked technical questions about the camera's capabilities and limitations. She was particularly interested in whether the technology could be used to gather evidence in criminal investigations. Dr. Kim confirmed that the camera could potentially intercept communications that would be valuable in court cases. Marcus asked about the risks of using such equipment. Dr. Kim's expression grew serious as she explained the dangers. Anyone using this technology without proper authorization could be charged with federal crimes related to electronic surveillance. But more importantly, the people you're spying on might try to stop you permanently. The examination revealed that the camera had been programmed to activate its surveillance capabilities only during high-stress situations. This explained why the glitches had occurred during the bank incident, but not during normal news assignments. The technology was designed to assist in dangerous situations. Dr. Kim also discovered that the camera was transmitting location data to an unknown receiver. Someone was tracking Marcus's movements through the equipment, which explained how the mysterious callers had found Robert Hayes. The surveillance technology was a double-edged sword that could expose Marcus to his enemies. Agent Martinez immediately arranged for FBI technicians to remove the tracking device from Marcus's camera while preserving its surveillance capabilities. This would allow Marcus to continue using the equipment safely while preventing hostile forces from locating him. As they prepared to leave Dr. Kim's laboratory, Marcus's camera began glitching again. This time, it showed him a view from inside Channel 7's newsroom. Marcus could see Frank Morrison, his news director, speaking on the phone with someone about Marcus's coverage of the bank story. Through the impossible audio connection, Marcus heard Frank say, "Yes, Marcus Chen is our cameraman. He's been asking a lot of questions about the bank incident." What kind of information are you looking for? Marcus felt sick as he realized that someone was using his own news director to gather intelligence about him. Frank had no idea that he was potentially putting Marcus in danger by discussing his work with unknown callers. Agent Martinez saw the expression on Marcus's face and asked what was wrong. Marcus showed her what he was seeing through the camera glitch. The FBI agent immediately called for backup units to be positioned near the Channel 7 building in case Marcus was walking into a trap. Dr. Kim quickly programmed Marcus's camera to record any surveillance feeds it intercepted. This would provide evidence of who was trying to track him and what they were planning. The camera's unique capabilities were becoming a powerful tool for protecting Marcus and exposing his enemies. The drive back to Channel 7 was tense as Marcus wondered what he would find at the newsroom. Agent Martinez followed in an unmarked car with 2 other FBI agents, ready to intervene if Marcus encountered any threats. When Marcus arrived at the station, everything appeared normal. Frank Morrison was in his office working late, and the newsroom contained only the usual night shift employees. But Marcus's camera was still picking up electronic signals that suggested surveillance equipment was active in the building. Marcus decided to test his camera's capabilities by pointing it at Frank's office. The glitch showed him a view from Frank's computer camera, revealing that someone was remotely accessing the news director's computer and monitoring his activities. The corruption investigation had clearly attracted the attention of people with advanced surveillance capabilities. Marcus realized that his unique camera technology might be the only way to stay ahead of enemies who were using similar equipment to track him and his colleagues. Agent Martinez met with Marcus in the parking garage after he finished his shift. She had disturbing news about the investigation. We've discovered that some of the corrupt officials have connections to private intelligence companies. They have access to military-grade surveillance technology and aren't afraid to use it. Marcus understood that the stakes had escalated beyond simple corruption charges. He was now involved in a high-tech surveillance war between law enforcement and corrupt officials who would use any means necessary to protect their secrets. 2 weeks after discovering the surveillance equipment in his newsroom, Marcus found himself living in a safe house provided by the FBI. Agent Martinez had moved him there after Dr. Kim detected multiple tracking devices planted around his apartment and workplace. The corruption investigation was escalating, and Marcus's camera had become a crucial tool in gathering evidence. David Kane visited Marcus at the safe house every few days to coordinate their efforts. Kane had been teaching Marcus how to use the camera's surveillance capabilities more effectively while staying safe. The former military sniper understood electronic warfare better than anyone Marcus had ever met. The key is knowing when to look and when to stay hidden, Kane explained during one of their training sessions. Your camera can intercept almost any electronic signal, but every time you use it, there's a risk that someone will detect the intrusion. Marcus had become skilled at using the camera to monitor the activities of the corrupt officials they were investigating. The equipment could tap into phone calls, access security cameras, and even read encrypted messages on computers. But each use required careful planning to avoid detection. Agent Martinez brought disturbing news during her daily briefing. We've identified at least 12 government officials who are involved in the corruption network. They include 2 senators, a federal judge, 3 Pentagon officials, and several defense contractors. The money trail shows payments totaling over $50 million. The evidence that Kane and Marcus had gathered was building an airtight case against the corruption network. But the officials were fighting back using their own surveillance technology and political connections. Several witnesses had received death threats, and 2 FBI agents had been reassigned after their superiors questioned their loyalty. Marcus's camera revealed that the corrupt officials were planning something desperate. During a surveillance session, he intercepted a phone call between Senator Harrison and a man with a foreign accent. They were discussing plans to eliminate key witnesses before the trial could begin. We cannot allow Kane or the journalist to testify, Senator Harrison said during the call. The evidence they possess would destroy everything we've built. Arrange for an accident that looks convincing. Marcus immediately contacted Agent Martinez with this information. The FBI began making arrangements to move all witnesses to more secure locations while accelerating the timeline for arrests. But Marcus realized that simply hiding wouldn't solve the problem permanently. Kane suggested a bold plan during their next meeting. Instead of just gathering evidence, we should use your camera to expose these people publicly. If their crimes become widely known, they'll lose the political protection that's keeping them safe. Marcus liked the idea but worried about the risks. Going public would make him a target for assassination, while potentially compromising the FBI investigation. Agent Martinez was strongly opposed to any plan that would endanger witnesses before the official arrest could be made. But Marcus's decision was made for him when his camera intercepted another disturbing conversation. This time he saw Frank Morrison, his news director, meeting with unknown men in a parking garage. Marcus realized that his own employer was somehow connected to the corruption network. Through his camera's audio interception, Marcus heard Frank receiving a large cash payment in exchange for information about Marcus's activities. Frank was being paid to spy on his own employee and report Marcus's movements to the corrupt officials. Marcus felt betrayed and angry. Frank had been his boss for 5 years, and Marcus had trusted him completely. Now he discovered that Frank was willing to sell him out for money, potentially putting Marcus's life in danger. Kane was furious when Marcus told him about Frank's betrayal. This proves that the corruption goes deeper than we thought. They have people planted in news organizations, law enforcement, and probably the judicial system. We can't trust anyone outside our small circle. Agent Martinez confirmed Kane's suspicions when she brought more bad news the next day. We've discovered that someone in the FBI has been leaking information about our investigation. 2 of our safe houses were compromised, and we had to move 3 witnesses to emergency locations. Marcus realized that his camera technology might be their only advantage against enemies who seem to have infiltrated every institution. The experimental surveillance equipment could help them stay ahead of the corruption network's plans and gather evidence that couldn't be suppressed. Marcus made a risky decision. He contacted Dr. Kim and asked her to modify his camera to broadcast its surveillance feeds to multiple secure servers. This would ensure that any evidence he gathered would be preserved even if something happened to him. Dr. Kim worked through the night to implement the modifications. The camera could now automatically upload intercepted communications to encrypted servers managed by international journalism organizations. Even if Marcus was eliminated, the evidence would survive. Kane approved of Marcus's plan but insisted on additional security measures. If you're going to expose these people publicly, we need to make sure you can disappear quickly afterward. I'll teach you some techniques for staying hidden that I learned in the military. Marcus spent several days learning urban camouflage, counter-surveillance methods, and emergency escape procedures. Kane's training was intense but thorough, covering everything from changing his appearance to using public transportation to avoid tracking. Agent Martinez reluctantly agreed to support Marcus's plan after the FBI discovered more evidence of corruption within their own ranks. We can't protect you through official channels anymore. Too many people know about our investigation. Your best chance for survival might be going public before they can silence you. Marcus prepared for what he knew would be the most dangerous assignment of his career. Using his camera's surveillance capabilities, he would gather irrefutable evidence of the corruption network's activities and broadcast it to the world. But first, he needed to get close enough to the corrupt officials to intercept their most incriminating communications. Kane suggested targeting Senator Harrison's private office during an important meeting. His schedule shows a conference call with foreign arms dealers scheduled for tomorrow evening. If we can intercept that conversation, it would prove everything we've been saying about illegal weapons sales. Marcus studied the building layout and security systems around Senator Harrison's office. His camera could potentially tap into the building's communication systems from a nearby location, but getting close enough would require careful timing and considerable luck. The plan was risky, but Marcus felt responsible for seeing the investigation through to its conclusion. Too many people had died to protect these secrets, and Marcus's unique surveillance technology might be the only way to ensure that justice was finally served. As Marcus prepared for what could be his final assignment, he reflected on how much his life had changed since that evening at the bank. A simple camera malfunction had revealed a massive corruption scandal and thrust him into a dangerous world of espionage and political intrigue. Marcus understood that there was no going back to his old life as a routine news cameraman. The technology he possessed and the knowledge he had gained made him a permanent target for powerful enemies. But it also gave him the opportunity to expose corruption at the highest levels of government and possibly save innocent lives. Marcus positioned himself in a coffee shop across the street from Senator Harrison's office building at exactly 6:30 the following evening. His modified camera was concealed in a messenger bag with the lens pointing toward the senator's floor. Kane sat at a nearby table pretending to read a newspaper while monitoring the area for potential threats. Dr. Kim had equipped Marcus with an earpiece that would allow him to hear any communications his camera intercepted from the senator's office. The plan was to record the conference call with foreign arms dealers and broadcast it live to multiple news networks simultaneously. Agent Martinez was coordinating from an FBI command post several blocks away. She had positioned teams around the area to provide protection for Marcus and Kane. But everyone understood that if their plan was discovered, the response would be swift and deadly. At exactly 7 o'clock, Marcus's camera began picking up electronic signals from Senator Harrison's office. The surveillance feed showed the senator preparing for his conference call with several other people present in the room. Marcus recognized Judge Mitchell and Pentagon official Colonel Davis from photographs in the FBI files. The conference call began with Senator Harrison greeting contacts in 3 different countries. Marcus listened through his earpiece as the senator discussed shipping schedules for illegal weapons sales to terrorist organizations. The conversation was being recorded and transmitted to secure servers around the world. "The next shipment leaves Norfolk Naval Base on Friday," Senator Harrison said. "We've arranged for the inspection records to be falsified, so the weapons will be listed as humanitarian supplies. Colonel Davis has the manifest details." Marcus felt sick as he listened to American government officials planning to arm terrorist groups for profit. The scope of their betrayal went far beyond simple corruption. These people were committing treason and endangering national security for money. Judge Mitchell's voice came through the earpiece next. "What about the witnesses who are threatening to expose our operations? Kane and that journalist have evidence that could destroy everything." Senator Harrison's response chilled Marcus to the bone. "The problem will be eliminated tonight. Our contacts have located their safe house and the situation will be resolved permanently. Make sure your court records show that any evidence they gathered was obtained illegally." Marcus immediately signaled Kane, who understood that they had been discovered. The corrupt officials knew where they were staying and were planning to kill them that very evening. Kane quietly called Agent Martinez to warn her about the threat, but Marcus realized he couldn't leave yet. The conference call was still in progress, and the arms dealers were providing details about future weapons shipments that could prevent terrorist attacks. Marcus needed to continue recording despite the danger to his own life. The foreign contacts began discussing targets for the weapons they were purchasing. Marcus heard them mention plans to attack American military bases overseas and civilian targets in allied countries. The illegal arms sales weren't just about money. They were part of a larger conspiracy to destabilize international security. Kane returned to Marcus's table with urgent news. "Agent Martinez says there are armed men surrounding our safe house right now. FBI teams are moving to intercept them, but we need to disappear immediately. The corruption network knows exactly where we are." Marcus made a split-second decision that defined the rest of his life. Instead of fleeing to safety, he activated his camera's live broadcast feature and began streaming the conference call directly to every major news network in the country. Within minutes, the treasonous conversation was being heard by millions of viewers. The reaction was immediate and explosive. News anchors interrupted regular programming to broadcast the live audio feed from Senator Harrison's office. Social media platforms filled with shocked reactions as Americans heard their elected officials planning to arm terrorist organizations. Senator Harrison's conference call was interrupted by urgent phone calls from his staff, warning him that his conversation was being broadcast nationwide. Marcus watched through his camera as panic spread through the senator's office. The officials realized their conspiracy had been completely exposed. Kane grabbed Marcus's arm and pulled him toward the coffee shop's back exit. "We need to move now. Every law enforcement agency in the country will be looking for us, along with the people who want us dead." But Marcus wasn't finished yet. His camera was still intercepting communications from the senator's office as the corrupt officials tried to coordinate their response to the exposure. Marcus heard them calling contacts in foreign countries, trying to cancel weapons shipments and destroy evidence. As Marcus and Kane escaped through the back streets of downtown, Marcus's earpiece carried the sound of FBI agents breaking down the door to Senator Harrison's office. Agent Martinez's voice came through clearly as she arrested the senator for treason and conspiracy. The next few hours were chaotic as the story exploded across national and international news. Marcus had single-handedly exposed one of the largest government corruption scandals in American history, but he and Kane were now fugitives, unable to trust law enforcement agencies that might still contain corrupt officials. Kane led Marcus to a secure location that he had prepared for exactly this situation. The abandoned warehouse contained supplies, weapons, and communication equipment that would allow them to stay hidden while the investigation unfolded. Over the following days, Marcus watched news coverage of the massive arrests that resulted from his broadcast. 12 government officials were charged with treason, including Senator Harrison and Judge Mitchell. The illegal arms dealing network was completely dismantled, preventing terrorist attacks that could have killed thousands of people. Agent Martinez appeared on television to announce that the FBI investigation had been successful, thanks to the courage of an unnamed journalist and a military whistleblower. She couldn't reveal their identities for security reasons, but she credited them with saving countless lives. Marcus realized that his life as a traditional journalist was over. The surveillance technology in his camera made him too valuable and too dangerous to return to normal society. But he had found a new purpose using his unique abilities to expose corruption and protect innocent people. Kane suggested that they work together as an unofficial team, using Marcus's surveillance technology and Kane's military skills to investigate corruption that traditional law enforcement couldn't reach. They would operate in the shadows, gathering evidence and exposing the truth when official channels failed. Dr. Kim contacted them through encrypted communications to offer ongoing technical support. She had developed additional modifications for Marcus's camera that would make their future investigations even more effective. The experimental technology would continue to evolve as they found new ways to use it. 6 months later, Marcus was living under a new identity in a different city, still working as a cameraman but now targeting corrupt politicians and criminal organizations. His camera had helped expose 3 more major scandals, and his anonymous broadcasts had become legendary in journalism circles. Kane had established a network of former military personnel and law enforcement officers who shared their commitment to justice. Together, they formed an unofficial task force that investigated cases too sensitive or too dangerous for traditional agencies. Marcus often thought about that evening at the bank when his camera had first malfunctioned. What had seemed like a simple equipment failure had actually been the beginning of the most important work of his life. The experimental surveillance technology had given him the power to see truth in a world full of lies and corruption. The corruption network that Marcus had exposed was just the beginning. His camera continued to reveal new conspiracies and criminal activities that threatened innocent people. Each investigation was dangerous, but Marcus had found his calling as a guardian of truth in an age when powerful people thought they could hide their crimes behind technology and political influence. Marcus knew that as long as corruption existed, there would be a need for people like him and Kane to expose it. His camera had become more than just a tool for gathering news. It was a weapon for justice, and Marcus was determined to use it to protect the innocent and hold the powerful accountable for their actions.